Hello, my name is Larissa Wayne Palmino, and I'm the chair of the People's Caucus of Briarcliff Manor. Can we please turn off all the phones? Thank you. Thank you for coming out to the People's Caucus Meet the Candidates debate on this cold, snowy night. Gods are with us, the snow stopped so we could have this meeting. And this meeting is being recorded by Visual Touch Media and will be televised on Channel 15 of Cablevision. The broadcast dates are as follows: Saturday, January 20th at 3:30 p.m., Sunday, January 21st at 1 p.m., Monday, January 22nd at 5:30 p.m., and Tuesday, January 23rd at 10 p.m. Thank you to our village manager, Phil Zagarelli, for letting us have caucus meetings at the community center for a nominal fee. Thank you to the incumbent village officers. They work tirelessly on the behalf of the village. Thank you to Laurie Sullivan. Thank you to Brian Zerman, Mark Wilson, Mark Pohar, and Chase DeRose. These guys work tirelessly. Thank you so much. I'll read the mission of People's Caucus. The People's Caucus of Briarcliff Manor is a nonpartisan civic organization which encourages qualified candidates to seek local elected office. Anyone who's a resident of Briarcliff Manor for a minimum of 30 days is automatic and eligible to vote in general elections is automatically a member of People's Caucus. Any such member may seek nomination to the People's Caucus Executive Committee. The Caucus Executive Committee is charged with tradition and processes on behalf of all residents of village of Briarcliff Manor. The Executive Committee will originate, circulate, and file nominating petitions for caucus candidates. Under the state law for village elections, nominating petitions shall be filed with the village clerk 35 days prior to the election date. So the cutoff date this year will be February 13. A minimum of 100 nominating petitions, 100 valid signatures is required for each nominee, and we usually try to get 150 signatures or more. To make sure we have enough signatures that will withstand any challenges that might be filed. We had over 250 signatures last year. It's not a small task for an individual candidate to accomplish, so we are lucky to have residents that are loyal to People's Caucus that help us with this every year. There are instructions and petition samples in the back if anyone wants to see. There are also sign-up forms for volunteers to help collect signatures. The People's Caucus needs funds to support activities such as videotaping, mailings, and advertising. We had a long-standing tradition of passing ahead at such meetings to raise money. But for the last couple of years, we've had fundraising events that's been very successful and well-attended. This year, we're planning a fundraising event at Arfina's restaurant on February 11th from 6 to 8 p.m. It's a Sunday, February 11th. We will once again have our famous wine tasting provided by none other than Aaron Stern, Briarcliff's own vintner, and entertainment by Mike and Miriam Risco. I hope all will attend. There are flyers in the back about the party, so we'd love to see you all come. We have a lot of fun. We will now read a resolution for the Secretary to cast one vote for the slate of People's Caucus Executive Committee. Our Secretary, Aaron Spring, will read the resolution.
Thank you, Larissa. I'll now read the resolution to cast ballot for Executive Committee, and it states, resolved that the Secretary shall be directed to cast one vote for nominees Aaron B. Stern, Chair, Larissa Wayne Palmeno, Vice Chair, Zachary Giampa, Treasurer, and Aaron Spring, Secretary, to serve as the Caucus Executive Committee for one-year terms commencing April 1st, 2018. Do I have a motion? And a second? And I will certify that I'm Aaron Spring, Secretary, and we have the resolution passes. Thank you.
Do I have any nays? Ayes, nays? So unanimously carried. In 2018, the positions of 2 village trustees are up for election. As you can see, we have 3 candidates seeking nomination for these positions. Mark Pohar is an incumbent village trustee. Chesa DeRosa is an incumbent village trustee. And Kevin Hunt is a new candidate looking for a position as a village trustee. Voting will be, we'll have special voting on January 24 at the Youth Center, which is behind Municipal Building. The voting will take place from 3 to 9 p.m. Voting will be done by paper ballots or absentee ballots that can be obtained from our website, www.peoplecaucusbm.com, or you can contact any of the EC members and we will help you obtain such a ballot. This is what the ballot looks like. There are copies in the back of the nominating petitions and ballots and a lot more other information. We will need 9 volunteers to act as poll watchers for the shift of 2 hours between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. If we have more volunteers than 9, the shifts will be shorter. The poll watchers will have the responsibility to greet people, help them sign in, and check that they're eligible to vote. We will have the voting books available to the poll watchers at the voting meeting. It's a simple task, but there are some instructions available in the back if you would like to familiarize yourself and prepare. We're again asking for more volunteers to circulate nominating petitions. If you can leave us your contact information on forms that are available in the back, we would greatly appreciate it. And now we will open the debate for village trustees. The debate format will be as follows. Each candidate can come up and make a short opening statement up to 3 minutes. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to questions that were put together by the executive committee. And yes, this is preemptive answer. These questions were provided to the candidates in advance. I would ask the audience if there are any additional questions. If there are, take an index card in the back, fill it out, and have it brought up to me. We will begin first going from left to right at the dais, and then reverse it right to left, and so on. The candidates will have an opportunity to comment as follows. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, comment on other candidate answers. Our Secretary, Aaron Stern, will keep time and hold a small plaque to indicate if there is 1 minute 30 seconds left. We'll be informal about it. We're not going to hold a gun to your head. And with that, we will go into the questions and answers session. These are the questions prepared by the committee, executive committee. What are the most significant issues facing Briarcliff Manor, and what are the possible solutions?
Aaron.
Yes, Aaron. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, of course. You can do it from there, of course. Yes. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. You want to go, Kevin? Go. Perfect.
All right, Kevin, you go.
I'm the guest, okay. Good evening, my name is Kevin Hunt. I've had a fairly busy week since the nominating meeting last week. I had rotator cuff surgery on Monday, which is made for a couple of interesting days and more of a couple of interesting nights. So if I, at some point, just go on rambling and not making any sense, please just politely ask my wife to take me home. My wife Lisa and I have been married for 25 years and have lived in this village for the past 20 years. Briarcliff is the only place we've wanted to live and raise our family. Our 2 grown children, Lars and Elizabeth, grew up in Briarcliff, went through the Briarcliff schools, and graduated and went on to college. Briarcliff really is the only place I've ever felt at home, and I love it here. My family's been incredibly blessed here in Briarcliff. I've had the privilege for the past 12 years of being an active member of the Briarcliff Manor Fire Department as firefighter in the Hook and Ladder Company, and as an EMT on the ambulance. For the past 7 years, I've had the distinction of serving as the captain of the Briarcliff Manor Ambulance Corps. I currently serve on the REMSCO board, which is the Westchester County oversight body of the EMS agencies. My wife and daughter became EMTs. My son Lars was a firefighter and EMT in Briarcliff as well. Lars is currently an active firefighter in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, where he now makes his home. In all my time at Briarcliff Fire Department, I've made several thousand visits to my neighbors' homes when they needed help most urgently. It was most likely their worst day in their recent memory. At any given moment, Briarcliff residents are likely reassured that Briarcliff has a fire department and ambulance. However, if someone they love dearly gets sick or has an accident and they need to dial 911, at that moment, the ambulance is the most important thing in the world. I don't mean to make it overly dramatize the point, but as far as service to the community, I feel safe to say that I'm vested. As far as my formal education, I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Cornell University and an MBA from Columbia University. I've had a long career in brand management and sales at blue-chip marketing companies such as Kraft, Unilever, Snapple, and Cadbury Schweppes. Throughout my career, I've worked in strategic roles requiring analytic and financial discipline, creativity, organizational and people skills, and hard work and result-driven environment. I do believe that the current Board of Trustees has done a good and commendable job over the past years. If I were to be elected as a member of the board, I'd be sorry to have to take someone else's seat. But I also feel very strongly that I can offer a unique and important perspective to the board as a long-standing resident of the village, a very active member of the Briarcliff Manor Fire Department ambulance, and someone with a very solid business and financial background.
Perfect. We made it. Chase DeRoss, would you like to?
Good evening. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight, given the weather and the cold. Thank you to the Caucus Executive Committee. I'm happy to be a part of the Briarcliff longstanding tradition. As I previously mentioned, I have been a resident of Briarcliff for the majority of my life. 25 years ago, my parents chose Briarcliff for our family. My brother and I are both graduates of the Briarcliff school system, and that is also where I met my wife, Carrie. Carrie and I were married in 2008 and did not consider any other places when purchasing our first home. The sense of community and positive experiences we have had growing up in this village were exactly what we wished for our own daughters. Over the past 4 years, I believe that I brought a unique perspective to the Board of Trustees. In managing my own businesses here in Briarcliff and growing up in Briarcliff, I have an intimate knowledge of the places and people that we, on a weekly basis, manage. Although I enjoy working with my colleagues whose children are grown, I think it's important for the Board of Trustees to include age diversity to represent the different residents here in Briarcliff. I have a young family with a daughter currently in 2nd grade in Todd's school. On the weekends, you can find us playing soccer on the fields, frequenting the village parks, and enjoying the local community events we work so hard to maintain. During the summer, my daughters attend the village camps and swim in the pool, the pool, and use the pavilion that we worked so hard to restore. Over the last 4 years, these unique experiences and circumstances have lent valuable insights. I look forward to what the next 2 years will bring, and I am excited to see all of the effort and hard work we've put into current projects pay off. Thank you.
Mark Pohar?
Good evening, all, ladies and gentlemen. Mayor Sullivan, Trustee DeRose, Zimmerman, Wilson, members of the Executive Committee of the People's Caucus, residents of the Briarcliff community. I'm going to throw a Hollywood zinger in here. It's with mixed emotions that at this time I decline my nomination for trustee of the Village of Briarcliff Manor, the state of New York. Over the past week, I've given much thought, and at this time I feel I need to focus my priorities personally on exciting things that are happening in my life and professionally. My wife said I shouldn't cry. My eldest daughter is moving out of state and starting a new career. My middle daughter is getting married. My son is graduating from college and going to graduate school. And professionally, we're pending career opportunities. Since moving to Briarcliff 22 years ago, I have volunteered my time on numerous boards and committees. This includes teaching religious education, I'm a wuss, at St. Teresa's, Todd's School PTA, Health and Safety Committee, Ethics Committee in the village, the Executive Committee of the People's Caucus, and my most recent position, trustee and deputy mayor for 6 years. Throughout, I have offered assistance, support, expanded my knowledge in government, and met wonderful, supportive residents. As you can see, my volunteerism, I am part of the village and the village is part of me. Although I am confident in my success in this election, I feel at this time I need to concentrate on family and my expanded job responsibilities. This was not an easy decision to make. The village is fortunate to have 2 qualified candidates for the 2 positions up for re-election, and I wish both the best of luck. I want to stress that I continue to be a resident of this spectacular village and community and will offer my services whenever needed. I wish to thank Maureen Frietta and Sean for the nomination. I thank you all for your continued support. Looking forward to being back in the service line in the future. God bless.
Oh, Mark, thank you so much.
And if anyone ever watches Dr. Phil, I'm going to march off with my wife. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much for your dedicated service. You've been wonderful. So it looks like we're not going to have a special voting meeting. It looks like there will be no special voting meeting and the 2 candidates should be confirmed. May I have a motion to confirm? What is your name, sir?
Charles Painter.
Are you Briarcliff resident?
Am I a resident?
Briarcliff resident. I'm sorry. I need to make sure that whoever. May I have a second?
Second.
And what is your name, sir?
Cesar DeRose Senior.
Oh, okay. Yes,
What
sir.
happens, is there anything procedurally that can change as a result of this? In terms of if the election or the special election was supposed to happen next week? If
The-
a new candidate was to arrive, get the nomination votes, the signatures?
No, it's too late. It's too late at this point. No, it's too late.
They can't run on the People's Caucus, but they can run, once this is done, petitions out, signatures.
Yes, I understand.
Are you interested in running?
Absolutely not.
Well, in that case, I guess I need a motion to vote for Cesar DeRose and Kevin Hunt as our village trustees. I see a motion by Mark Wilson. Do I have a second?
Would it be a motion to nominate them as our candidates, not
It's
as?
still an election.
Yeah, they're still an
It's
election.
just not a special election.
Yeah.
It's a resolution. Right. For the uncontested candidates.
I still need a motion and a second for resolution for uncontested elections. So I had Mark make the motion, no? You can make a second.
All right, I'll second it.
Okay. So now we have 2 very qualified candidates.
Can we ask questions anyway?
Of course we can ask questions. We will ask them questions, of course. Zach, why don't you see if there's any questions in addition to what we prepared? I'm sorry. What do you see as the biggest challenge?
So that was,
This is all new to me.
now I know why I wanted to go third. Now I know why he didn't want to go first.
Do I have to ask why? So now we have, before the questions, I have to make this nomination official. Do I have any ayes or nays for nomination of Cesar DeRose and Kevin Hunt as village trustees of Briarcliff Manor? Any ayes? Aye. Susan Coe, okay. Any objections? Any other comments? Good. Now we'll proceed with the questions. We have to have our fun. So the first question will be, what are the most significant issues facing Briarcliff Manor and what are the possible solutions? Cesar?
Excuse me. The one issue that strikes me first when I'm in the village, I'm asked constantly by residents, because I think that it ties into several aspects of our village, and that's parking. And I believe that in the village, you have an issue with parking for A, the number of spots, B, the amount of time that you can stay at a spot, and then whether or not that time frame is enforced or not. And then I have people complaining to me, I parked there for 2 hours and no one ever said anything, and then another time I parked there for 1 hour and I got a ticket. I say these are issues because I believe that they tie into other areas of the village. Number one being we have properties that are coming up for development, which it stands to reason that as more properties become developed, you might see more residents coming into the village, therefore making the parking perhaps even more congested. I believe this also ties into the revitalization of the downtown. There was an advisory committee put together for that purpose, and I know that the merchants and residents, the input and data that they gathered, parking was a significant issue for them as well. So as far as an issue that I see that kind of runs through certain different threads in the village, I would say that it has to do with parking. As far as what are the possible solutions, I think that a renewed look at the signage, perhaps staggering timeframes, obviously sitting down and having lunch or dinner in Chatterbox, for argument's sake, versus running inside the deli for a quick sandwich or a bottle of wine at the liquor store takes obviously a different amount of time. So I believe that looking at the amount of time that the parking and staggering those parking spaces and the amount of time frame that you can park in those spaces would help significantly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you,
It's your
Chaser.
turn.
There's a couple of things that come to mind, and I have a bit of a bent from having been in the ambulance and the fire department, but one of the things I'm considering is when we look at the properties that are up for development, the Pace University campus, the old Phillips Labs, and even the club up here in Briarcliff, there's a lot of things I think I want to make sure we consider. And again, I'm very familiar, and I take a very analytic look at the ambulance and the call volume and so on and so forth. Using round numbers, we'll say that the ambulance made 800 calls this year, okay? And over the past several years, there's been about a 10% increase in the number of calls per year. But if you look at where those calls are, that's where it gets to be kind of interesting. Residences themselves count for about a third of the ambulance call volume, okay? And that's down about 2%, all right? Roads where we have car accidents and things like that, dangerous things. We have the Taconic, we've got Route 9. There's some dangerous stuff there too, but those are down about 8%, okay? But if you look at separately, Atria, which is a big piece, that's about almost a quarter of our calls, and that fluctuates month to month. Brandywine, which is 8%, which is actually which has a bit of an increase, but that's a bit of a patient population issue. And then 345, the North Hill Senior Apartments up on North State Road. All of those account for almost 40% of our call volume, okay? And each one of those is up substantially. So as we look to develop the properties in Phillips Lab, we look at the properties, even the club as it stands right now, and I'm not as intimately familiar with what the agreements are with the people at the club. But again, I mean, I have a relationship with the people in the REMSCO, which is the Westchester Regional EMS Council. And I check with other people and other services, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, and all. And they say that they're seeing a lot of the same things. The older communities are actually having an increase in terms of the number of call volume compared to residents and other things, okay? And again, over and over, a call volume that increases 10% every year. By comparison, the fire department does about 530 calls last year. I think it's roughly about that. Again, we're talking round numbers. But that's a concern to me. Again, I take this ambulance thing super seriously, and we have a dedicated group of people that I would go to the gates of hell for tomorrow. But the problem is, takes a lot to get somebody to start as an EMT. It's a 140-hour course, and then you have continual training. So again, if we're looking at this and we consider these, what we're going to do with these properties, I think we really need to take a good hard look and make sure we understand some of the other aspects of what we're asking for, rather than just a profitable tenant to have there. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next question. The mayor and the current trustees have indicated that they want to work towards becoming a coterminous town village. Do you believe this is still worth pursuing? And we'll start with Kevin.
I am not as familiar with this as others. Obviously, I've just sort of recently started looking into all this. If this subject goes back, if you look at the Meet the Candidates reel back from 2014, it's been a subject of discussion almost every year. What I gather, and again, I'm totally open to new information, but from what I've been able to gather, it really comes down to a question of fairness, is how I see it anyway. As a resident who pays a lot of taxes, and federal tax and state tax, I don't see a lot of that money coming back to the village. For our own village taxes, though, I'd really like to see what we pay into the village benefit the people in the village. And when we have the coterminus, where we started looking at the Briarcliff Manor as its own entity, as opposed to the different districts and taxing and so on and so forth, and all the, it tends to get, for me at least, it gets a little complicated. I really like to see a far greater degree of simplicity.
Chaser?
Fortunately, I have a bit more familiarity. I'm by no means an expert, but the current situation is the town of Ossining taxes can be up to 30-35%, whereas where population-wise only 23-25%. Now, let me be clear. Tax inequality is never a good situation. I think that given what's going on at the federal level with property taxes and things of that nature, now there's never been a better time to pursue something of this nature. In fact, I can share tonight, just as recently as this week, the current board and the village manager have reached out to the village of Ossining via a letter in order to get the ball rolling on pursuing this a little bit further. So without staying a little bit more topically, because not everyone's as familiar, there will be more information to come as that unfolds.
Excellent new information.
Did you say you reached out to the village of Boston or the town of Boston?
Excuse me, the town of Ossining, pardon me.
Next question. What do you know about the homestead tax option? Should the village undertake an effort to educate residents on the homestead tax option that should be considered by the town of Ossining? Chaser?
I'll be truthful. I don't know as much as I would like on that particular issue. Again, topically speaking, I would support educating the residents absolutely. The little bit I do know about the homestead tax option has to do with the way in which condos are taxed versus single-family homes. I do know that without having our own assessing unit, there could be a bit of a challenge. There are other aspects in play that would have to happen prior to something like that coming to fruition.
Thank you so much. Kevin?
Yeah, again, somewhat limited, but I also understood that if we did pursue the coterminous agreement, that we would have to have a assessor and so on and so forth. Part of that apparatus to come up, so it makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure I understand all the intricacies of how condos work, other than it's just a legal way that the housing is set up as a corporation versus the ownership of a single home. But if somebody lives in a 2,000 square foot home or 2,000 square foot condo, that they are so, I think it's less than half or maybe even less than half, as far as the condo is concerned, under the homestead, or under the way it is now, that seems to be a bit of an inequity.
So it appears that you both feel that the issue should be pursued.
Well, certainly education of the populace and of the residents, and then find out what they want. I mean, what they want actually has a a great deal to do with what we should be considering doing.
Thank you.
I would agree with that statement.
Next question. What is the status of widening the east side of North State Road at the 9A intersection to alleviate the traffic which currently impedes traffic heading through the intersection or turning right onto 9A North?
I guess it's my turn.
Yes,
I
it is.
am so happy that this is going on. I really am. I live up behind Squires in that neighborhood up there, and it's just, I'm fine with it being under construction now as long as we're heading in the right direction. I can tell you from, again, my own experience, that is the single most dangerous intersection in all of Briarcliff Manor. I've been to more car accidents at that intersection than at anywhere else. The other one that comes almost second is right in front of Guadalajara Restaurant. I don't know why. I still don't know why, but there's a lot of car accidents down there too. Maybe people slam on the brakes figuring, oh, it's a great time to have Mexican food. I don't know. But it's crazy how many accidents are there. That they've thought it out, the left turn signal, the holding lane, the right, it's just going to make things so much better. There's no greater sense of frustration than pulling up going westbound on North State Road and then having someone not feel like they want to drive out a little bit further to make the left turn and have to go around them. I've heard some salty language there, which embarrassed me a little bit, I got to tell you. No, but I'm wonderful. That makes me so happy.
Chesa, it's your turn.
The board currently, as a matter of fact, a few years ago, recognized the impact of the challenges of crossing 9A and the logistics of turning and what have you there, and the busyness of the corner when you have in play with respect to the Dunkin' Donuts Squires parking area versus Value Drugs and Mrs. Green's and what have you, as well as cutting across North State Road to come to what we call the Beer Hotels Corner and then into the downtown business district. The board several years ago actually took the lead and liaised with the New York State Department of Transportation, the state, the county, as well as the village, because to make matters more complicated, the road isn't a village road. So obviously you've seen some construction there. We're a little bit in hiatus due to weather and this cold snap and freezing and what have you. But that's expected to be done early spring. You're looking at an end of April, early May finish. The only slowdown that you see now per se is really due to weather and concrete and asphalt not setting the way that it's supposed to when you have the weather that we've been having.
Are you saying that all the construction, including Burritella Corner, will be completed by April?
No, I'm saying that you'll see a significant improvement. They'll finish with the asphalting and assuming there's no other weather-related delays, you'll see the status of that project come to a close in the early spring.
Good to know. Thank you so much. What has been done and what else can be done to revitalize our downtown business area? And I'll give you a hint. Streetscape.
Is that my turn?
It's your turn.
As I mentioned earlier, an advisory committee was put together. The original background work was done as early as March of, I think it was 16, and Lou Wachtel has spearheaded that advisory committee, and they've reached out to various business owners, residents. Multiple residents had put their input in as to how we could spruce up the way that the village appears, the way it looks, as far as infrastructure, as far as signage, as far as storefronts. So they put together a three-pronged approach, which is a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term sort of wish list. There's some low-hanging fruit that we've been working on with Phil Zigarelli and the DPW. That's the stuff like painting and cleaning up the light poles, getting new trash receptacles, putting up recycling bins, that type of thing. Very much, sort of the sprucing up. More of a midterm goal, which they're working towards, is getting some more involvement with the business owners. And most importantly, here's the catch is the building owners. One of the challenges has been that on what we call the strip of downtown, you're looking at 7, 8, 9 different landowners. Then not to mention the various businesses as tenants. So there's a lot of people at work and a lot of people at play here. So that work is being done by the advisory committee. They're working towards some of the longer term goals. And, you know, I think that there are some things that we could do that will immediately impact the way the village appears, which we've started to do, like I've mentioned. And then as you work with some of the landowners and the building owners and the property owners, you start working towards the more midterm and long-term goals. So I believe that that's a matter of collaboration, and there's quite a bit that has a lot of moving parts that all people, even above and beyond the board and the village and the DPW, that need to be working together. But that ball is rolling.
That's a very nice way to put it. I happen to be on this committee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Thank you so much. Kevin, are you familiar with this issue, the downtown?
I am somewhat familiar with it, and I think Chaser did a phenomenal job outlining a lot of what's going on, and that's my understanding is exactly that. My background is in branding and marketing and all, and it's a nice town. It's a wonderful downtown. I mean, I'd love to see it look a little bit more contemporary. When people walk around with a smile on it, and it looks clean and fresh. There's a consistency of look. I look forward to being a part of that process. I really do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And this is the last question from the executive committee. I will read the questions from the audience later on. What are the potential uses for the vacant corporate offices in Briarcliff Manor, such as Merle or Phillips? Are you familiar with that, Kevin?
Somewhat. Is that the whole question? Okay.
What potential use for the corporate offices? What can we do with them?
Again, I mean, when we talked about what are the biggest issues, I mean, that was one of the things I was really talking about. And that was just a concern about, it almost seemed like there was a focus on like the older communities. And I think there's a place for that. I think, for me, I really would love to try to find a way to get younger families in here too. I mean, if you look at the people who really feel committed to this village, it's the people who brought up a family here. It's the people who have roots here, people who have multi-generational people, you know. I do feel very connected to this village, and one of the reasons I do is because I've lived here for 20 years. But I mean, it's been 20 years that were really special years. My kids grew up here. Again, my father-in-law basically was the one who talked me into getting in the fire department, but I wish I'd done that sooner. But again, that connection to the village and becoming more of a part of it, and not just having it be a place where you go to sleep every night. My mother-in-law, who I adore, is over at the Atria, and she's been there for a little while. And I mean, she likes being there, but she doesn't really consider herself to be in Briarcliff. I mean, and again, just having that connection. Yes, there are things that we can do to have businesses. I'd love to be able to make sure that we can be as attractive as we can from a business standpoint, and have other people maybe move into the village as a result of that. So that's what I'd really love to focus on.
Thank you so much. Chaser, any comments? Can you add to that?
I can. We're talking about the potential uses for the vacant property.
And Phillips, the
Surely. The current zoning, as it stood, is been something that's been talked about for, I believe, 15, 17 years now. From the information that I know and my recollection, it was a very narrow and very obsolete way of marketing the properties. For instance, you mentioned Merle and Phillips. They could be a labs, a research facility. You know, in truth, I don't see the marketplace bearing those type of businesses coming to the village at this stage. And the marketplace has spoken because these properties we speak of have been vacant for 10 plus years. So I think that the fear was, whether it's sooner rather than later, at some point you're going to start coming up against the property owners asking for tax certiorieries. You're going to start seeing the places stay vacant for a longer period of time. You know, that's never a good thing, all the trouble that's associated with the vacant properties. So as far as moving towards a more current use for those properties, residential, you're starting to see a lot of apartment style living, townhome style living. You know, I would absolutely have no problem if a corporation called up tomorrow and said, we'd like to move into the Phillips Labs property, we'd like to move into the Merle property. Unfortunately, I just don't see the marketplace bearing that. So moving towards what I would think is more of the residential type of uses seems to make the most sense from the standpoint of marketability of vacant properties.
Thank you so much, Hazel. Cecilia, how are we doing on time? How much time do we have left on the tape? Okay.
Can I follow up?
Of course. Go ahead.
So just to clarify, you're saying on the Phillips property, you'd be in support of residential development such as condos or apartments?
Sure.
And what about you, Kevin?
Well, you have to be open to everything. I mean, you consider it. I mean, there may be positive or negatives associated with anyone. It may be dependent on who's asking.
Well, let me,
Go ahead, Hazel.
I think, I mean, I would agree with that whole statement except for that I'm open to anything. Because I could see that being, I'm open to residential, I'm open to corporate with very strict restrictions in place, whether that's subject to the special use permit, whether that's subject to the parameters of the zoning board. I'm not interested in having it be open to anyone.
Well, again, it depends on what the opportunity is. I mean, your opportunity presents itself, you can always say no.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we'll read questions from the audience. This question, I don't know, I don't have the names on these questions. What do you see as the biggest challenge faced by the village in the coming year?
You already, that was my question, but you asked that as part of the executive board questions.
Okay.
It was a very good question.
We can do it twice. And this question, I don't know who wrote this question, but I have trouble reading it. It has to do with comprehensive plan. Who wrote this question? Can you read it? Would you mind doing that? Because I have trouble. Thank you.
And this is really for Mark and Cesar. As it pertains to the recent passing of the comprehensive plan addendum, why, after asking for resident input and comments and reviewing them, a significant majority had asked for delaying the vote to incorporate some of these suggestions. The vote, the vote went through despite significant public opinion against it.
I can answer that. At the time, we took quite a, I'm sorry if you want to listen to the answer.
Go ahead.
At the time, I know what you're talking about, and at the time, we'd reached out with many residents. We'd heard many resident comments. We had met privately with certain residents, and we took all input into consideration. At the end of the day, I think we came to a valuable compromise where the majority of the resident concerns were addressed. If not everyone's concerns were addressed, you know, I apologize for that, but you know, unfortunately, at a certain point, you have to move forward and make decisions with input, but you still have to make decisions.
Is there any other questions from the audience? Go ahead.
Since the development of that intersection that was referenced before,
9A,
and
North State Road.
is there any possibility of getting some sort of a mechanism for emergency vehicles to go through there quickly? Because I know there are some emergency responders that live on the other side of the village. And when they're trying to come to the firehouse, there's a delay there because, you know, in their civilian cars. And if there was a mechanism for emergency vehicles to change the light, because as was pointed out before, that is an extremely dangerous intersection.
It sounds like
And I'm just wondering whether there are any grants available for that sort of thing.
I would go to the source with this question. Feels like a rally.
No, I didn't ask the
No, the answer. I'm talking about an answer.
Anyone who's in experts can either ask the repeat of their.
Chaser, would you like to take this question?
I would like to let the village manager answer.
I want to tell you, I am not a resident of Briarcliff, so I'm doing this on freelance. This is freelance. Part of the whole planning on the intersection, a lot of people may not know how intricate it is that when the mayor proposed the whole thing and pulling all the communities together, we pulled also DOT. Now, we can all say it's one of the worst intersections in Westchester County and so on. Believe me, if you've been around the county, there's a lot worse. But right here, and the focus here was for Briarcliff. So we went out and we went to the DOT. We made a little pilgrimage up to Poughkeepsie. We have since had many meetings. And this is a hybrid project. And what I mean by that is, again, I don't mean this offensively, is that the DOT would not be normally doing this project with their own money and planning. They have so many things above us ahead. So they saw the regard on the part of the mayor and the board to do this, and they responded and said, okay, let's try something different. And so what they're doing is they're contributing their part. Their part is the signalization of the intersection. So complex this will be is that it will be monitored. This one and also Chapqua Road will be monitored in Hawthorne by way of satellite. And the flexibility of the program, as I understand it, is that electronic gear put into responding vehicles like a fire truck, like an ambulance, and so on and so forth, will be able to trigger the change in the thing. That's what I understand. They're also supposed to channel it to link up with because of the way all the streets are, we call it Biratella's Corners, which is North State and Pleasantville Road, because if you don't do that one when you're doing that, you're going to have a big mess. And it's the same thing for longer term back and forth on Route 9 at Chapqua Road, and actually the next intersection up in Ossining. So, long-winded thing, yes, it has the flexibility to do that. We've talked to them about it, just as we've been talking to them about fixing the bridge here, which just came across new again, that they have to do a gas main, so it's going to be all redone, and all the paving and so on and so forth. So there is a method to our madness, and I know that the board and myself have taken a lot of heat from people. Okay, why didn't you just pave it? Why didn't you just do it? That's because we're doing all these new electronic things, and we're trying to catch up with the technology to have the very best. We do not know of anybody else, any other community in Westchester that has gone this far and working with the DOT and other levels of government to get this done. Long-winded, you didn't have to use the 1-minute warning.
I'm sorry I didn't put this question. I didn't think it would be a fair question for Kevin, being that Chase is an incumbent and Kevin probably wouldn't know anything about it. But thank you, Mr. Zaccarelli, for clarifying it for us. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other matters? Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Mark Wilson. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. DeRose. Watch Cablevision for the broadcast of this meeting. The dates on the back. There are other items of business?
I think we should just thank Mark Hobart for his services.
I think this is a very good idea. So I'm taking back my announcement about special voting meeting. It's not going to happen anymore. We'll just go to our regular election meeting on March 20th. And don't forget about our fundraising event. Those blue flyers are about that fundraising party. And thank you for coming, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.